Life can be fast-paced, strenuous, and flat-out overwhelming. Life transitions and taboo topics can make it hard to catch your breath. Welcome to Breathe, a podcast that enables you to slow down, get your bearings, and engage in real conversations where no topic is off limits. Breathe is presented by Breath of Life, hosted by David Person and speaker-director Pastor Debleaire Snell.
Welcome to Breathe. I'm David Person, and it is good to be here with you as always. Looking at our folks who are watching us on YouTube.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
And also to those who are listening on any of the platforms that we have. Of course, we give special place to the Android platform.
Yeah.
The Android friendly platform. And then the Apple people, they get YouTube.
Yeah.
Pastor Snell was like, I don't know about that.
I don't know.
Yeah. That's a running joke between us.
Listen, I pick up on it.
Yeah, he was just dogging me about
I wasn't saying get an Apple. I was just saying get a newer one. A Pro. Yeah. Listen. If you could see David's phone, you would be able to tell it has quite a bit of mileage on it.
It's got some mileage on it. It's got some mileage.
Kind of like me. I've got a lot of mileage on me.
Oh man!
But welcome to Breathe, though.
Amen.
We're glad to be here.
Absolutely.
With Pastors Debleaire Snell, of course, senior pastor of the Oakwood University Church, and our speaker director here at Breath of Life, and Pastor Kirk Nugent, who is also on the pastoral staff of the Oakwood University Church, is the media pastor.
That's right.
And is the media guru here at Breath of Life. He's behind the scenes and also on camera with Pastor Snell.
There you go.
Just saw you all recording. I caught the tail end of what you were recording earlier.
Vision Lab.
For CEOs and entrepreneurs.
That's correct.
Leaders.
It's a great space. We believe that God has ordained that particular show for us to be able to deposit into that particular audience, and we're excited about how that's growing and how that's going to move.
Now, I know this is not why we're here today, but I just feel compelled to say, people that I've had conversations with, they marvel at just the plethora of media. Of media products, the Breath of Life has created, audio and visuals.
Right.
This is good stuff, man.
We're really excited, and it's funny because the audience they're responding, and what it does is it just creates this fuel, to kind of make sure that we're hopefully giving deposits that are impacting and ministering to them where they are. And one of the things that we've always wanted to do was just to be able to expand or diversify the offering of Breath of Life. And God is kind of creating the resources for us to be able to do that and pour into leaders or families
right?
or
Relationships.
Just talk to the culture. So we're excited about it, and so we're praying that it's helpful to the body.
Beautiful. Absolutely. And we're excited about what we've got in store for our listeners and viewers this month.
Yep.
We're going to look at the theme, Is It Possible?
Is it possible?
Is it possible?
And this is going to be...
Mission Impossible.
Actually, Mission Impossible. Yeah. Is it possible? We're going to look at the viability of the claims and the practices of Jesus. Now, you may wonder, what is he talking about?
Yeah.
So...
break it down.
Let's deal with the one for today, which is the possibility of peace, or... is it possible to sleep in the storm? So this is a reference directly to the story of Jesus, who, as we all know, Jesus was asleep in the boat during the storm. The disciples were afraid. Jesus rebuked them for their fear, and then, of course, he brought the storm to a peaceful resolution or to an end. So,
So, and can I jump in real quick?
Yes, please.
And one of the reasons where I think I wanted us to look at having this conversation is there are a number of claims or practices or principles espoused by Jesus or Scripture that I think by and large, a good portion, I won't say all, but a good portion of Christendom sees as fictional. Like, okay, that really only applies to Jesus himself.
Right.
Or the apostles, but I don't know that there is a feeling that this has true implication or relevance to me. And so that's why I want us to kind of really walk through these things and kind of talk, from a principle standpoint and an experiential standpoint, to kind of see if we can kind of maybe help the audience or even just see if we identify with some of the questions or concerns they may have.
Yeah. That's the viability part, right?
Right.
Is that something that could be for me?
Right.
Can I sleep in the storm?
Yeah.
And I love the phrasing, the possibility. Am I saying that right? The possibility of peace. Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
And I think for somebody out there, that's resonating already.
Sure.
Because of what they're currently going through.
Right.
Because if we don't see these stories that are in the Bible from the lens of our own context, what we're also going through. So for them, it was a physical storm, and he was able to sleep. But for us, it may be a emotional storm. It may be a financial storm. It might be a physical. There's
a rich metaphor.
Exactly. And is there a possibility of peace in that place? I think that's a heavy question to grapple with.
So going back to the viability of the claims. It reminds me of one of the founding fathers of this country, Thomas Jefferson. He famously, or you may say infamously, created his own version of the Bible where he excised the miracles of Jesus. Basically took the position that, that's fictional is not true.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Let me just deal with the words and some of those
the ideals,
concrete things.
Mercy.
Yeah. So that kind of goes back to what you talked about. People not necessarily always believing. Yeah. So let's deal with the storm, the actual story itself. Well, I mean, is this? I mean, obviously, we believe this is a true story. What is your theological reaction to those who doubt it?
That doubt it's a true story.
Yeah.
Well, I at some point you can't necessarily. One of the things I've learned is that you can't prove God. God cannot be proved. God must be revealed. I think through preaching, what has been revealed can be reinforced, confirmed, and you can act upon it. But theologically, I think at the end of the day, each and every person has to respond to however it is God is revealing himself to them and either choose to accept or reject. And then that would then inform kind of how they view the scriptures, how they engage henceforth. That's kind of, I don't know if that answers that question or not, but yeah. So I think you kind of have to. Everybody's got to grapple with that for themselves.
Right. It's an individual sort of journey.
There's when you look at the story itself, and of course the ramifications of it, because you can't look at just the one particular incident, right? So he calms the storm. You've got to look at the whole context of who he was with and all the different things that are happening, and then of course everything that led up to his crucifixion. The whole story, when you look at the whole story and what Jesus came to do and to achieve, you begin to see themes, and you will begin to look at them through the lens of your own life. I totally agree with Pastor Snell. There is a confirmation that God does for his people. This is, we talked about this in a previous episode in terms of being a witness. A witness is somebody who has had a personal experience with this thing, or with this, maybe a personal account, right? We talked from a legal perspective. You get on the stand, they want to know what you saw from your first person account of what happened. Well, you can't have that first person account until you've actually had an experience with it for yourself. So it will continue to be words on a page until you get to know the man that the words on the page speak about. And I think that's a very personal walk, personal experience that people will have to go through for themselves.
Yeah, personal spiritual experience.
Absolutely.
All right, so I think we are, as modern readers, we are inclined to look at the disciples and sort of see them as weak.
Right. Yeah.
Their faith was weak.
Right.
It is so true. It is so true. We read it and we're like, these guys, man.
Yeah. They did not have it together.
They didn't have it together, man.
But
the clarity of hindsight.
The
clarity of hindsight. Yeah.
So that's what I wanted to
and yet we probably find ourselves in the same space.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask. I mean, for us, how do we know what our posture would have been in that situation?
Listen, I'm gonna keep it all the way 100.
All right.
I know what my posture would have been.
Come on.
Listen, we had a privilege last year to go to the Holy Land.
Yes, indeed.
And to actually kind of sail across the Lake of Galilee.
That's right.
And it is one of the most amazing. The scenery there, it is breathtaking. When you come over the hills and you go down a good ways into a valley.
No, you're over the hills are you talking about walking before you get?
We're driving.
Driving.
Yeah.
Okay,
So it's a good length down to the water.
Okay.
It's breathtaking scenery. But like once you get there and you are far from the shore, and like. There's not really civilization. Like I can only imagine when it's nighttime there.
Right.
You can't see anything. Like there are no poles. There may be a lighthouse in the distance, but like you can't see anything. I mean, I'm just gonna keep it all the way 100. I would have been right there with the disciples, probably with one caveat. They took a while before they woke Jesus up.
Oh no!
I would have been like, "Yo, Master, don't you care
that we perish?
That we perish." I mean, it's one thing, to go through a storm on dry ground.
Yeah.
But I can only imagine kind of the type of fear or anxiety you would have about going through a storm on sea. And so the reason I'm saying that, so even, we talk about that physical storm and the fear that they had, but just even emotionally, spiritually, financially, the kind of storms you reference, man, we show great fright.
Yeah, we do.
And
we do.
Discombobulation.
Yes, we do.
And just a crisis of faith at scenarios that are less fearful
than that
and threatening than that one. And that's why I'm kind of like, okay, like I'm changing kind of the way I see it, because I'm kind of like, all right, I've been in some storms that really probably weren't even a crisis. And at different points in my life, I mean, I'll admit that just the faith was not there. I wasn't ready for the moment.
Right. No, and that's a real, I love that framing of it, because sometimes we read it and we're like, these guys again, because we're reading it, from the context of
and
the
you
Bible.
know how the story ends.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right.
It's like these guys.
I think in my mind, I've always sort of seen that scene with, and now I'm listening to what you just said, I'm embarrassed to say this, but kind of with Hollywood lighting. I can see everything that's going on, when the reality is, like you said, it's probably pitch black.
Pitch black out
there. Maybe
pitch
there
black.
was moon, maybe not. If there was a storm,
Not
probably
this,
not.
Right, you can't see it. Yeah.
So if you can't see anything,
it's just you just feel. That's it. You're just being rocked.
Right.
More water is coming in than you can keep out.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
because they didn't have the technology that
No,
we have.
That's
so,
the thing. Because even when we visited, we're on a modern boat. We're we got off on a whole docking system and all this other stuff. And we're taking selfies on the boat. I mean, we have modern technology. It's peaceful.
Right.
So you have to look at it through the lens of, this was not now. This was then. And it's still dark now.
Yeah.
Right.
So I can only imagine what that would have been like then. So I love that framing of it, because it does make it real.
Yeah.
It does allow us to really sink our teeth in.
See, I just wouldn't have took it long. I've been like, yo, as soon as the weather's, hey, Jesus. I wouldn't have waited as long as they did. They tried to manage it for quite some time.
No.
I was like, nah.
Yeah.
Let's wake up the one who has the power.
Mercy.
So keeping it real, we know the deal.
Yeah.
We know how we would have been, all of us, I think, concede that. But let's deal with this real issue of sleeping through the storm.
Yeah.
I mean, how possible really is that, aside from the Son of God doing it?
Sure, yeah.
For us, as flesh and blood with fears that are real to us.
Yeah.
Are we being too hard on ourselves?
Sure, yeah. So, one of the things, and I'm hoping this is the takeaway for our believers, for those who are watching, is just that the peace of God, it is not fictional. I do believe that it can be your lived reality if we engage in the way the Bible says we should. So the book of Philippians 4 says, be anxious about nothing, but to pray about everything.
Yeah.
And with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God, and the peace that passes all understanding will guard your heart and mind through Christ Jesus. I think Isaiah 40:31 says, thou will keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed upon you. And so, those promises of peace, they're not these kind of absolute blessings that just fall randomly. But I do think that a prayerful posture of kind of really saying, okay, I'm going to really give this burden, this stress, this worry to God, and I'm going to trust him to handle it. Instead of fixating on that problem, that enemy, that worry, or that stress, I'm going to be intentional about kind of keeping my mind stayed upon him. And I think that it is when we, operate with certain conditions, I think that's when we're able to experience the reality. Now, this is the other thing about it, and this is the uncomfortable truth about sleeping through storms, right? I think one of the things that, and there's this one writer that says, in the heart of Jesus dwelt absolute peace. There was just this trust for the Father. Like, he was not tripping about where I'm going to eat and where. Like, he just knew the Father was going to provide it. Now, of course, there is a relationship and a maturity that Christ had that we've got to continue to seek for. Right. But where I'm ultimately getting is this. I think you learn how to sleep in storms when you've been in them repeatedly. Mercy. Mercy. And so I think part of that peace is a byproduct of kind of personal and spiritual maturity. Yeah. So and I think you guys can attest, was there some things that would really stress you out at 20? Yeah. That you look at now and you're like, this is light affliction. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. There are things that I'm talking to my kids and they get all worked up about them. It's like, guys, it's not that deep. Or there were some things that let's just say, even me as a pastor, where if somebody felt a certain way or said a certain thing or put a certain thing on social media 15 years ago, it would have had a certain effect. Whereas kind of as you grow and as you mature and you develop your core, like those things just literally just don't bother you in the same way. Or even they're not even noticeable to a certain extent.
Even relationships. I think about my relationship with my wife now and what it was day one. We're about to celebrate 18 years. And no. I'm not worried about certain things anymore.
What was worth a big fight
exactly
or
back in the day.
You don't even give it the same kind of energy.
No, you're so right.
So I do think that there is a maturity that occurs through repetition and living life and abiding in Christ. Because I ain't gonna lie, there's some things I look back over and I realize I was worried about and anxious about. And I look back on it and I'm actually ashamed because I'm like, man, Dave, I just wasted all that anxiety and worry and concern over something that God had already made provision for, that he was going to already sustain me in. Right. And again, this is the clarity of hindsight. And so that's why I think that there is a certain relative nature to it, so that, because I don't want to downplay what somebody's going through. Right. But I do want to say to somebody who's maybe 25 or 30 or 40 or 50, the way you're stressing about a thing now, in 10 or 20 years, as you mature, you operate and you've seen God do it and you've weathered certain storms and you've seen God's faithfulness, you just will not stress about the things in the same way. And I do think there's a certain amount of peace in going through storms with some repetition.
I think that's very strong.
Yeah, very strong.
And it resonates with my own experience. I also feel that this whole issue of being at peace, when I was younger, I used to think that meant that the circumstances around me would change. But I learned, that's not what it means. What it means is that my mental state, my spiritual state changes. And so it's like no matter what's happening around me, I can be at peace. Because I'm trusting in God's ability to resolve it and to deliver me or to provide for me. And so I don't worry about the circumstances as much. Right.
And I do think, because peace doesn't necessarily operate in the circumstances. I think, to your point, it operates inside of you. My dad, before he retired, did air conditioning work. And so Yeah, unfortunately, I've had to crawl into more attics and under more houses than I care to admit. I mean, especially in Florida, going under the houses, that was such a thing, right?
Oh, no.
But I remember we went to this one particular house, and it was winter. I mean, our winters are not as bad as on the in the East Coast or the North, but get down in the 40s or 30s or whatnot. And it was very strange because we went into the house, and the heat was not working at all. Like, it was as cold inside as it was outside. It was a brand new house. And we never really seen anything kind of like that where it's as cold inside as it was outside. Now, what made it strange was when he put his hand next to the vent, the vent was putting out sufficiently warm air, yet it was still freezing.
Oh, wow.
And so we're just like, yo, this heat is on. Why is it freezing like this?
Right.
And so Dad sends me up to look at something in the attic. And it's crazy, this new house, and I think there were some relatives that got together and built this house. You know what they didn't do? They didn't put any insulation in the attic. And I think they didn't really do it in the walls either. And so it's funny because when the house doesn't have insulation, whatever's happening on the outside is going to be happening in the inside.
Mercy.
Whether it's cold outside, it's going to be as cold inside. Hot outside, it's going to be as hot inside. And I think spiritually and emotionally, when you don't have any insulation,
that's it.
Whatever
that's it.
is happening outside of you is going to bleed in and dictate the temperature.
That's the word.
Inside of you. And that's why I do think that our walk with God, our beliefs, our experiences, they help provide that insulation so that those outer circumstances don't always dictate my inner disposition, wellness, solemnity. And so the thing I do want to be mindful of is not to create an inhuman concept, because I think at the end of the day, all of us have, I don't know, if I see I ain't gonna lie, if I see a snake on this floor right now, like, you know what I'm saying?
We're not gonna be a piece.
Or, if somehow
none of us.
Right, If I was to go to my bank right now and somehow there is no money in it, I'm gonna kind of feel away for a minute. But I think that at the end of the day I think at certain points, so it's not that, man, we're just completely impervious to everything. But I think what peace is it determines the permanent posture of your heart. So at the end of the day, as a human, you're going to be startled, stressed. But I think that doesn't have to be your permanent soul or heart posture. That doesn't have to be your permanent response to the things that are happening around you.
Man, that's good. That's good. I like the way that the framing of it, the insulation, and I think even what you shared, Dave, is a word for somebody out there today, that it isn't your external circumstances. You can have peace regardless of what's happening. Because for some people, the definition of peace is I need some. The soft music is playing. There's a waterfall. I'm in meditation.
Things get better.
That's it. But the ability to sleep in the storm, in terms of what we're talking about here, as we look at the life of Jesus, that comes from something internal, something on the inside that is, as you mentioned, impervious to the things that are happening on the outside.
Funny story, and that's why I do think one of the keys though is I do think you need some gray in your life. I think you need some. It's funny watching older people, respond to variables. It's kind of hilarious because it's just kind of like, I mean, it's funny because there was a time where I thought that was just dismissiveness or indifference. It's peace. It's like I've kind of seen this before, and I know what God will do.
Mercy.
I remember when I first moved here to Huntsville, kind of a crazy story. God had blessed our ministry at the first church, and we had gone from one service to two full services, and we had begun the journey of looking to purchase the building where the church is currently. And so there was an individual in a group that felt we should not be doing that, but that we should be directing a certain amount of attention to the church school at the time. And again, we were making a very sacrificial commitment to the school. So like this guy, man, is just, and I don't even know him. He wasn't even a member of our church.
Oh my.
Right? This is the thing about it. So I'm in my office one day, and one of our new members comes in and is just like, yo, Pastor, did you see this billboard that was up here on Highway 53? I'm just like, yo, what are you talking about? So she was just like, yo, you got to come see this. So it's a 2-part sign. And so, there was on one side, it says, Dear First SDA church members.
Whoa.
Your pastor just bought a mega church while your kids go to school in a rundown trailer. What is his real mission?
Wow.
And so on the other side, it had Dear Madison Mission SDA members, which is another one of our sister churches.
Right.
And so for those who understand, all of our churches come together in a constituency, and we pour money into our local academy.
That's right.
So, he was just like, yo, your pastor hasn't done anything to help support the school. What is his real, quote, mission?
Whoa.
This is Pastor James Doggett at the time.
Yeah.
So I'm just looking at this joint like, this is unbelievable, right? I'm just like, what am I supposed to do?
Wow.
I know this is going to hit social media,
Yes.
so forth. So I called Pastor Doggett, right?
Yeah.
He was one of my teachers when I was here as a student. And so, he happened to be on campus. So this is probably about 3 miles away from campus. So he comes over and he looks at it. And I ain't going to lie, David, he looks at it for about 4 minutes. No, excuse me, like 2 minutes. And you know what he looks at me and says? He's like, welcome to Huntsville. Yeah, he's just like, welcome to Huntsville. I mean, and he gets back in his car. No. I think he like shifts the conversation to like something about the Lakers or something. And I'm just like, yo, dude. But
This is big.
I'm just
This
like,
is big.
yo, and so in my little new world at this point, I'm probably like 33 years old at the point.
Right.
And he is just like completely just unbothered. Like,
Wow.
it meant nothing to him. Now, if he was acting, he should have got an Academy Award
Right
this
there.
particular
Yeah,
day. But
yeah.
there was just a depth of soul
Yeah.
that was just completely unbothered, simply because I think in his ministry journey, there've been burdens heavier to carry than this or different things. And so, and it's funny, so fast forward, there in the role I'm doing now, we are, let me be clear that we are encouraged overwhelmingly by 95% of people who are blessed and just prayerful, so on and so forth.
Sure.
But there's an element that doesn't always love everything you do or say.
Absolutely.
And they can be very
vocal.
vocal about it. And I ain't gonna lie, when it kind of seems like a storm, man, I ain't gonna lie, I sleep great every night.
There we go.
You know what I'm saying?
There we go.
Regardless
Yeah.
of those things. Now, again, you won't always kind of,
Yeah.
eat the fish spitting out the bones kind of thing.
right.
But, I just do think that kind of when you've kind of gone through certain things with enough repetition, whether it's financial, whether it's in your marriage. So that you said it, there are certain things where, year 3 in your marriage, you're wondering, can we make it? Year 20, you're like, okay.
Okay. Yeah.
That's you're just evaluated differently.
Right. Yeah,
So I do think, man, I think I want to just encourage somebody to know, like, yeah, we will experience stress, some fear moments, but what we want to avoid is fear patterns, stress patterns, and allowing kind of the outward circumstance to dictate the posture of the soul in a permanent way. Yeah. So I just think that if, number one, you maintain a prayerful disposition where your eyes are centered on God more than the difficulty. I think if you're living in your peripheral vision, or you're living horizontal and there's no vertical focus, you're going to live a life of high anxiety and stress.
Yeah.
No
peace.
Then I think that there's a great quote: "We have nothing to fear for the future,
Except
lest we forget the way in which God has led us in the past."
Yeah.
And the truth is that I think that when we all look at our history, we will see points where, man, we thought we were going under professionally or emotionally. I don't know if you ever kind of had a week where you're just like, I don't even know how I'm going to make it to the end of the week.
Mercy.
And there have been a bunch of those weeks.
Yeah.
And I still have those kind of weeks where just the load is so big. I'm just like, I don't even know. But like, okay, I think through it, we've had this kind of week before.
Yeah.
And God has helped us kind of work through it and maneuver it.
Yeah.
And then I just think you need some spiritual sage gray
Yeah.
wisdom in your life.
Gray wisdom.
To kind of
I like
help
it.
you help you put things in perspective.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's good.
There's a verse that came to mind that when my son was a little boy, they had to, I think he was in nursery school, and they had to remember some Bible verses. And I remember this was the verse that they had to remember, Psalm 56:3. When I am afraid,
Yeah.
I will trust in you.
Yeah.
And periodically, years later,
Yeah.
periodically, when I feel myself clenching up in a crisis,
Sure. Yeah.
that verse will come to mind.
Yeah.
That's good.
I would trust in
and
you.
I try to put that into play.
That's a good word.
That's a good word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's peace there.
There's
Yeah.
peace there. It
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
It is definitely possible to sleep in the storm.
And that's a good word. And I just want to say to somebody who's maybe feeling anxious, afraid, uncertain, unsure, because you're in, maybe it's the perfect storm where you've got multiple things colliding at once. I do want you to know that not everything around you is going to survive the storm. Maybe the job is taken away. Maybe the car is about to die. So there are things that don't survive the storm, but you are going to survive the storm. You're going to come through it with your faith intact, with an added page to your testimony. And it may not seem like it at the moment, but this is where you have to really trust and abide in faith more than you abide in your feelings, especially when you're in the storm.
Exactly.
Well said.
Beautiful.
Well said.
All right. I think that's a good way to kick off the month of July.
Yeah.
Learning that it is possible to sleep through the storm. Not only literally, but metaphorically.
Amen.
All right. Pastor Debleaire Snell, Pastor Kirk Nugent, thank you, brothers.
Yes, sir.
And to our Breathe listeners and viewers, God bless you. And don't forget, no matter how challenging life may be, no matter how much the storm may be seemingly insurmountable, ready to just tear your stuff apart.
Yeah.
Just stop.
Yeah.
Pray and breathe.
Breathe is produced by David Person for Breath of Life. Executive producer is Debleaire Snell, and sound engineer is Kirk Nugent. Audio episodes of Breathe can be found on Apple, Spotify, or Google podcast platforms. For video episodes and extra content, check out the Breath of Life YouTube channel. Breath of Life is faith-based content, resources, and programs from a contemporary urban perspective for those looking for hope and guidance. We believe that every breath we take is a testimony that God is consistent, that He loves us, and has a plan for our lives.